Hello. This is What If Luffy Ate the Sun Fruit. Please like and subscribe to my channel and check out the author and fanfiction linked below in the description. Also, I would like to tell you that I am not planning on monetizing this channel in the future. Enjoy. The sound of rushing water was so loud they could hardly hear anything else. It was absolutely gushing in at ludicrous rates. The screen they had been speaking to Crocodile on hadn't been dark for more than a few seconds and the water was already up to their ankles. "We need to leave." Robin shouted so that she would be heard over the roar. "Now," she said urgently. Zoro had his swords out in a flash and had turned to the way they had come in. "Hyakuhachi pound HM." He roared, swinging all three of his blades. An audible sharpness cut through the roar of the rising water, blasting it away from them from the sheer wind pressure. A spray kicked up as the wind blades traveled and a screech rang through the air as they crashed into the wall. It was utterly carved up, but to no avail. The bars made out of Karamsiki held easily, resisting the power of Zoro's attack. Luffy's luck was no better. He jumped up and swung his leg out with a rankyaku. At the main entrance up above them, but was met with the same failure. A single-legged Geppetto had him cocking his leg back as well. This time, his leg was glowing bright with the power of the stars, Enten no Kizu. The arc of plasma hit the sea stone barrier with a bright flash. Again, the sea stone withstood the rage of his attack, though it didn't escape entirely unscathed. It looked very slightly melted, almost as though it was sweating. Too far away, none of the three realized that as Luffy splashed back down, ugh. He slumped over, the rising water now high enough to start sapping him of strength. Robin was no better, and the two staggered to the steps with Zoro's help, regaining their vigor as they got out of the thigh-deep water. But eventually, they would run out of even the safe haven. Especially with a light rumbling coming from the tunnel. More water started draining in, with Bananawani starting to enter the room as well. "Robin, how thick is the roof?" Luffy asked her, grimacing as the water once more started to lick at his ankles. Robin bit her lip. "It's a couple meters thick." She crossed her arms. "Give me 5 seconds." She closed her eyes, opening dozens of them above in the casino, along with blooming dozens of arms. Patrons started to scream as she grabbed them and threw them towards the walls of the building. In only a few seconds, almost the entirety of the center of the floor had been cleared of patrons. She groaned as the water reached her thighs again and prevented her from finishing the job. "We have to go now." Luffy groaned. "Zoro, throw me up." Zoro quickly followed, grabbing Luffy and absolutely bulging his muscles. Itchy gorilla. He threw Luffy straight up before grabbing onto Robin. "Rankyaku. Tentai HM." Luffy yelled, plowing his leg into the roof. Upstairs, the remaining stragglers screamed in terror and agony as they were blown away. The floor had exploded upwards, creating a giant fissure in the casino floor. The massive concrete slab continued upwards, destroying the golden crocodile on the top of the pyramid and sending debris raining across Rain Base. All of the patrolling marines gaped at the sight before they hurried to the destroyed building. Down below, Zoro hauled Robin onto his back and jumped. The three pirates landed above in the destroyed casino, wincing as they saw the devastation they had wrought. But it was no time to pity the innocent people they'd unfortunately hurt. "We need to get to Alubarna as soon as possible," Robin said, forcing herself to keep focused. "Let's go," Luffy said, and they ran out of the building and towards the bridge. They needed to get out of Rain Base if they wanted any chance at catching Crocodile. As soon as they had hit the town square proper, they were attacked. Smoke started to fill the air as Smoker roared onto the scene. "You damned pirates. What the hell do you think you're doing?" He charged at Luffy, who gripped his pipe and drew it. Pipe hit Jid and a shockwave blasted out as Smoker was forced back. "Damn it, Smokey. Get out of my way." Luffy yelled at him. "You won't get away with this." Smoker yelled as more and more marines started to fill the area. White blow. Zoro got in the way, blocking Smoker's Jid with Yubashiri. "We don't have time for this." He yelled at Luffy. "None of the rest are strong enough to fight Crocodile, Luffy. Get out of here." Crocodile Smoker gnashed his cigars. "What does he have to do with this? Did you destroy the casino because of him?" "Luffy, go." Robin yelled, before pointing. "It's that way. It's a straight line exactly where I'm pointing. Go." Like a Robin, Smoker yelled with wide eyes, along with the newly arrived Hina. "You're with him. Don't you guys dare get captured." Luffy yelled, before rocketing into the air with a quick Geppetto and then igniting his thrusters and starting to fly. He quickly picked up speed and had to start using Tekkai as a sonic boom ripped through the air. Harsh winds buffeted him as a vapor ring formed around his body. He sped from the city faster than he had ever flown in his life. "No, you don't." Smoker roared as he turned to chase Luffy. White launcher. "Zoro." Zoro vanished and appeared in front of the marine, surprising him. He grabbed onto the Jid and wrenched it, smacking Smoker in the face with it and knocking him out of the sky. Smoker hacked out a cough as he plowed into the ground with Zoro on top of him. "Sorry, our captain has business with your dog. I can't let you follow him." He raised his fist to knock him out while he was weak from the Karamsiki contact before jumping away as Tashigi swung almost wildly for his head. Damn it. Tashigi half-kneeled protectively in front of Smoker, panting, damn you, Rorano Zoro. All that talk about how you weren't a bad guy and now you do this, she screamed at him as she nodded towards the destroyed casino. Zoro grimaced as Hina rushed forward, Hina will capture you, pirate. She was another marine and a woman on the taller side. She had bright pink hair and was dressed very sharply in a burgundy suit with her marine coat worn loose over her shoulders. Robin never quite knew how people managed to do that without them just flying off. I think not. Robin said as arms bloomed in front of Hina, stopping her charge, Sion Fleur. 100 arms bloomed, going for several of the armed marines that were starting to point their rifles at them. Clutch. Dozens of marines screamed in agony as bones were broken. Hina herself was encircled with 10 arms on her own, grabbing onto her in various places. Irritated. Hina is irritated. The pink-haired smoker mumbled before the limbs just passed through her, leaving them grasping at air. Various shackles had formed on the arms holding her, and Robin immediately dispersed them when she realized her usual tactic had failed. Robin's lips twitched, Robin is also irritated. She shot at the pinkette with a half-smile, what an annoying ability you have, Hina. The tick mark appeared on Hina's head, Hina is being mocked. How very dare you. Still, she quirked her lips, this shall be an interesting fight. Hina wonders, will her stamina run out first, or yours? I suppose we'll have to find out, won't we? Robin replied, though I suggest you lot get a move on. She glared at the fodder, we tried to keep the civilians out of the splash zone, but we weren't exactly keen on drowning beneath that casino. Hina's eyes narrowed, Hina is curious as to what is going on. Hina will capture you quickly. Oh, you know, years-long conspiracy to undermine and take over one of the 20 founding countries of the world government by one of your government dogs. Standard stuff. I'm sure you're used to it. Robin replied, smirking as she saw the 3 leading marines recoil. What the hell? Tashigi was the one that asked, shocked. But why would a government ally? Smoker spat on the ground, damn dogs. I never trusted them from the start. Zoro finished tying his bandana on and smirked at Tashigi, what, never heard of a villain with good publicity before. Confused. Hina confused. What horse do pirates have in this race? Hina asked them as she directed the marines past them and into the casino. The fodder stood 0 chance in this fight, so she would make sure they were useful. The rest of them picked up and carried away the injured, leaving only the 2 pirates and the 3 ranked marines left. The rest of the area had long since cleared out. Were you just looking to defeat Crocodile and claim infamy yourselves? No. Smoker was back on his feet and glaring at Zoro, they sounded too urgent for that to be the case. What are you lot up to? Wouldn't you like to know? Zoro put Wadden between his teeth and drew the rest of his blades. Robin crossed her arms again, and the 3 marines got set and ready to go as well. Vivi launched herself forward with a quick Zoro. It was enough to surprise Sir Crocodile, judging by his widening eyes. With a scream of rage, she slashed right through his neck, throwing his head into the air. But that wasn't all. She even cut through part of the elevation throne with her slashers. She knew it wasn't over yet though, and her burgeoning Kenbun-shoku confirmed as much. She dodged backwards and vanished in another burst of speed. Hoo ha 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 ha. Crocodile laughed as his head turned to sand and crawled up his suit. The man hadn't even moved from his place on the throne, other than to reach up and try to grab her. My, picked up some tricks, have we Miss Wednesday? And so quickly too. You haven't been with these fools for more than a couple weeks now. He grinned darkly, yes, I can see why I lost so many of my agents to your band of morons. He stood from his throne, unfortunately, girl, I'm not like the mongrels I recruited for this farce. I've seen the new world for myself. Did you perhaps think that you could surprise me with sheer speed? He relished the growing look of rage on their faces, I'm afraid not. He said silkily, negligently grabbing his spent cigar and tossing it away. I'm not some idiot who thinks Loja are unbeatable. I've trained my mind, body, and powers far beyond those fools. Wow, you sure love to hear yourself talk, huh? Nami asked dryly. From this small sample size, she wasn't sure if here Arlong was worse. Arlong loved it too, but he rarely propped only his own ego up, preferring to talk up Fishman as a whole. And speaking of Fishman, she was rather wishing she had actually pretended just a little bit harder and learned some karate from her old crew. She would have loved to shut this asshole up with Shmrim no Mizu right about now. Taka had his feet under him again and he transformed into his hybrid form. You're right. Loja aren't invincible. But every fruit has a weakness. I just have to find yours. He lunged forward, slashing through the Sandman with his sword. Pitiful. Crocodile rolled his eyes as he stood and simply walked through the slash, is this truly the best that the fabled jackal can do? His weakness is water. Vivi called out, drawing a frown from Crocodile. It prevents him from turning any wet areas to sand. She was frowning heavily. Ah, I suppose that bitch must have figured it out herself. He looked irritated. Well, no matter. I made sure there was none in the area. Vivi was grimacing a bit more heavily now. A small headache had been building ever since they had started confronting Pell and Chaka earlier, and now it was twinging painfully. Almost as if someone was lightly rapping her skull with a hammer, only it was increasing in intensity as time went on. She was still paying as close attention to Crocodile as she could, but it was definitely bothering her. So that's why you've gone through all the trouble of getting rid of the rain. Pell ground his teeth, his face transforming as he too took on his hybrid form. Unseen to Crocodile, he stabbed his talons into his thigh. The pain was immense, but he didn't show it at all. Crocodile snorted, hardly, fool. A little bit of rain in a desert would barely hamper me. You overestimate yourselves. Taka also took advantage of the information, turning into his full jackal form, slavering. Water, or any liquid. He lunged teeth first for the man. Crocodile snorted, I suppose you're blind as well as stupid. He knocked the jackal away with a casual whack with his armored hook. The attack even knocked a few of the animal's teeth away, disgusting too. Keep your drool away from me. He was barely paying attention to Nami and Vivi as he grabbed Pell's talons with his actual hand. Ho, clever. Very clever. He praised Pell upon seeing the blood on his claws. But how much blood do you think a human has? He asked rhetorically, I'll tell you. Not enough. Pell's entire transformed arm began to shrink, desiccating away as Crocodile used his powers over dryness to start sapping away the moisture and strengthen the limb. Let go of him. Vivi shrieked, using Zoro to dart forward. Ah, good. I was hoping you'd come. Crocodile started to grin at her, entirely taking his eyes off of Pell and Nami as he kept up with her speed. That was his undoing. Mizu no Yari. Nami yelled after appearing right behind Crocodile, thrusting her clean attack forward and using her newest technique. One she and Usopp had installed specifically in the eventuality of her meeting Crocodile for whatever reason. At this distance, there was absolutely zero way for Crocodile to dodge unless he had seen it coming. And seeing as a veteran like him would never even think of having to try against a bunch of rookie weaklings, Sir Crocodile had most certainly not been using his Kenban Shoku. The medium-pressure jet of water hit him and basically exploded, drenching his head and torso and causing a very slight drizzle of rain inside the throne room. And seeing as Vivi had already been slashing for him and he'd been meaning to merely disperse into sand. Vivi's absurdly sharp Kujaki string slashers ripped right through his collarbone and continued upwards, slicing into his face and carving right through his right eye as he desperately tried to dodge backwards. The man threw himself backwards on the ground, getting even wetter and positively gushing blood as he rolled away, howling in agony. Quickly. Kill him. Chaka roared as he charged, his sword ready to pierce his enemy's heart. Sables. Crocodile's agonized voice roared out before a tornado of sand rose up around him. Chaka and a charging Pell had to both leap back to not get shredded by the sandstorm. Vivi grabbed Pell, run. She yelled, grabbing his arm and fleeing. No. We can finish this now. Chaka roared to be heard over the roaring sand. No, you idiot. I can only use that move once. Nami shrieked, move your ass. She turned and booked it, following after Vivi. Chaka glared at the sandstorm before turning and running as well. The closer they got to the exit to the veranda overlooking the main courtyard, the more Vivi seemed to stumble. Vivi, what's wrong? Nami caught her and slung Vivi's arm over her shoulder. My head. Vivi hissed through gritted teeth, clapping a palm to her forehead. Arg, what is this? She shook it and tried to focus. Her head didn't hurt anywhere near as badly as it would if Crocodile won. She fought through the pain. Pell, as soon as we're out of here, you need to fly away and check a place called the Spider Cafe. It's past the Sandora River and even Aramalu at the other end of our island. What? Pell gasped, still shaking his right arm out. It was back to normal after that little water bath Nami had given it, but it hurt. No. I cannot leave. Ooze I say. Vivi snapped, making his jaw click shut in shock. We thought the place would be abandoned, so we never bothered going there. But if Crocodile really prepared a drowning trap underneath rain dinners for the others, then my father can't be there. The Spider Cafe was a front for Baroque works, and high-level agents were there all the time. It could be where they're keeping my father. But how could they have gotten him in so short a time? We saw the king mere hours ago. Chaka asked through grit teeth. They've probably had him for days. Maybe even weeks. Nami explained, one of their members ate the main no me. He can copy other people's faces and is a good enough actor to impersonate them flawlessly. So that's how they did it. Pell raged, and with the king's face, they could sow their evil throughout the land, with us none the wiser. Exactly. Vivi said, we need to rescue my father. If we can present him, then the enemy can't use his face. Or better yet. We can have my father show his face while the enemy is impersonating him. Then it'll be. She cut herself off with a scream as they neared the door, clapping a hand to her forehead and staggering. She almost dragged Nami down with her. What is happening? She cried out, tearing up. They burst through the doorway, with Chaka shouldering it open. Immediately, sound blasted them as their hearts dropped. Various areas in the city were on fire, and it was obvious that the rebel army had already arrived. They were too late to stop it. The sound was deafening as the two armies fought, and it was like every single death was stabbing Vivi directly in the brain as her Kenban Shoku fully woke up. It was like in her mind there were over 1,000,000 lights and dozens were winking out at a time. No. She nearly fell to her knees, damn it. No. We were too late. She cried out in despair. Damn it. Nami cursed, what did they do? The guard ran over to them, Chaka-sama, Pell-sama, wah, he zeroed in on Vivi, the impostor. No. Pell roared, the king was the impostor all along. He grabbed the man, tell me what happened. The guard stammered, the king went in Anohana. He told them, the rebels came because he burnt it to the ground. They were all shouting it for the world to hear. That they were coming for vengeance for Nanohana. You're telling me it was a fake all along. Fuck. We must have missed them by just a few hours when we arrived. At most. Nami cursed their bad luck, we could have stopped this right then and there if we hadn't blown through the blockade so quickly. Vivi could only stare at the growing devastation in horror. So, Miss Doublefinger drawled, taking a drag from her kiseru, you're the ones that have been causing us so many problems, She breathed out a cloud of smoke. Sanji grimaced, and you're the ones that have been causing Vivi so many problems, he twirled, oh, the sea is cruel. To have such a fair beautiful lady as an enemy. Miss Doublefinger smirked, oh, but who says we must be enemies, darling? She made a show of eyeing him up and down, oh, but you're just my type. This organization has been such a drag, you know. Maybe I can just run away with you. Sanji's eye turned into a heart, oh yes miss. He took a step forward, only to crumple to the ground as Chopper jabbed a hoof into him. Idiot. Chopper yelled, even I can see her playing you from a mile away. Think of Vivi, dumbass. Ah yes, Sanji lit up a cigarette for himself, yes, the seas are cruel indeed. Miss Doublefinger growled, I think I'll take care of you first, Tanuki. She glared at Chopper. Are you blind, woman? I'm a reindeer. Chopper roared out at her. Let's take this elsewhere. He was a monster, even if Luffy didn't seem to agree with him. And he would embrace it to protect his friends, no matter how much he wanted to allow his knees to shake in fear. This was an assassin and one of the most dangerous individuals in Baroque works. Hey now, I didn't agree to allow a woman to be hurt. Sanji glared at his newest crewmate. Topper's eye twitched, do I need to tell the girls that you're being an idiot again, or are you actually going to fight? The last time Sanji had acted like an overly chivalrous fool on the Mary, there had been pain. Sanji's teeth cut through his cigarette, sending the rest of it to the floor. He spat the rest of it out, a man should never harm a woman. I will not allow it to happen within my sight. His ears caught something, and he gathered Chopper up in a hurry and rolled to the right. The wall next to where he had been standing shredded and exploded outwards, peppering them with bits of rubble. Sanji smirked as he got to his feet, grabbing another cigarette and watching as the placid and uninterested Mr. One emerged, luckily, it appears I'll be too busy to watch. Topper growled out, I'm still telling Nami. And Sanji started to sweat. Crash. A deafening rumble rocked through Alubarna as Valerie crashed into the ground. Somehow, once it stopped shaking and the dust cleared, she growled out in irritation, whack-a-mole isn't as fun as I thought it would be. Ha. Miss Merry Christmas popped her head out of her newest hole, just watching you makes my back hurt, you damn traitor. Usopp deadpanned, yeah, maybe you should have thought of that, before calling dibs on the one lady who would just get out of your way Valerie, Usopp yelled at her. He just barely had his breath under control. Mr. Four was huge, slow, and extremely strong. Just off pure muscle, Usopp would have compared him to a fishman. But that wasn't the most irritating thing. The most irritating thing was the fucking dog gun that fired exploding baseballs. Every time he tried to snipe the man, the asshole dog cannon intercepted it. You can't hit any of those pitches, dumbass. He couldn't even use his improved version of Krieg's old spear. The whole point of that entire upgrade was so he could use it without the explosions blasting him through a wall. Let's trade. You could lay out this idiot easy. He called out. Hell no. Valerie cracked some knuckles just from squeezing her fist. I told you all I was going to make grandma bitch here pay for insulting my chocolates. Ha. You call those bitter dirt balls chocolates? Miss Merry Christmas jeered. You should go back to the bargain bin you bought those taste buds at, grandma. They're clearly defective. Valerie shrieked, bursting forward in a soar with her umbrella raised high above her head. Her face was shadowed with rage as she swung down. Miss Merry Christmas's laughter echoed out of her hole as she vanished back within the earth. Boom. Again, the earth rocked so hard that Usopp almost fell over. Oy vey, he mumbled as he got his feet under him. The earth stopped quaking as he eyed his opponent. Honestly, it's an insult to my sniping, but maybe I should just try hitting him. He mumbled. Ooh and kil me eai mister. 4 was saying. Are you still on that, moron? That was 6 paragraphs ago. Usopp screeched at him. Ugh, why him? Ayakuhachi pound HM. Zoro yelled, sending his 3 air slashes at Smoker. TCH. He clicked his teeth in irritation as Smoker simply dispersed into his smoke. The air blades continued onwards, slashing into another of the buildings and carving into it. Thankfully it was an abandoned one, here on the outskirts, though it was another thing to be irritated about. The swordsman should only cut what he wished, not what he didn't. Will you ever learn? Smoker deadpanned as he tried to surround Zoro once again. His smoke was so weird. It could grab onto things and even hold them. It acted nothing like regular smoke when you got down to it. Utilizing a quick Zoro got the hell out of dodge. It had been like this for more than a few minutes already. He would try to cut Smoker, and he would fail. The man would just turn into his shitty smoke to dodge his attacks and then try to surround him to capture him. Zoro had already utilized one Tatsumaki, which was what had gotten them far away from their original battlefield near the casino and towards an emptier area. Smoker had even complimented him on moving away from the civilians. Really, Zoro had just gotten annoyed at the townspeople begging their hero to save them. Not that he would have consciously harmed them anyway. Zoro snorted, will you? He shot back at the Marine, you haven't learned a damn thing. You're still just trying to surround me with your stupid smoke. You're not strong enough to keep me from moving no matter how much of my body you manage to snag. He grinned viciously at Smoker's grimace. Are those muscles just for show? Their very first exchange had ended like that. Zoro had been expecting it, but Smoker had pulled a new trick. He'd engulfed them in a whirling tornado of smoke and had tendrils grasp at Zoro's limbs to lock him down. Zoro had very easily outmuscled the Marine, swinging his arms and creating his own tornado, blasting the smoke away and dispersing it. He'd almost thought he had won, since it had taken a minute or two for Smoker to gather himself. Don't get cocky, scum. You haven't so much as put a mark on me. Let's fix that. Zoro grinned, his eyes shining, shall we Toragari? He blitzed forward, swinging 2 of his blades down at his enemy. Smoker raised his jit, gritting his teeth and looking like he was going to burst a blood vessel as he caught the blades on his weapon. The ground beneath his feet cratered slightly from the impacts and he let out a groan as his jit trembled from the force Zoro was putting on them. His arms lowered and his own weapon touched him. That cost him a bit of strength, making him wobble from contact with the Kermsiki. Zoro's blades continued downward before they jerked to a stop right before one of them would have carved into Smoker's shoulders. Zoro jerked back and leapt away, making Smoker stop and stare at him in befuddlement. What the hell do you think you're doing? He asked, growling the words out. You had me. What in the fuck do you think you're doing? Zoro sneered, if you don't understand, I won't waste wind on an idiot. Smoker's teeth started to grind in his jaw. Are you, he hissed, using me for training? Zoro smirked, all fights are mere training for my dream. Subam hikm. Zoro ducked as Tashigi's voice sounded behind him. It looked like the woman had finally caught up to the two of them. She sailed over his head, Shigeru having been primed to cut deep into his shoulder. She hit the ground and slid, coming to a stop beside Smoker. Darn. She cursed, panting. She wasn't great at that move and it always took a lot out of her. Too slow. Too obvious. Zoro yelled at her, and your damn glasses are falling again. Get a better fitted pair if those are so bad. How dare you? Tashigi gasped, completely offended as she adjusted them, these are top-of-the-line brand names. They cost me 3 weeks of pay. Well, they fit like your head is an inch bigger, dumbass. He yelled back, get your money back. Smoker interrupted them, what are you doing, Tashigi? He glared at his subordinate. She blinked, She blinked some more, helping to take him down. Why are you not helping Hina take down Nico Robin instead? He growled out. Tashigi hesitated and Smoker rolled his eyes, oh fantastic, is he your rival? Is that what this is? Hell no. Zoro called out, smirking. Yes I am, asshole. Tashigi called back before cringing and looking back at her deadpan superior. Fantastic. Smoker growled out, if that's the case, you need more training. He's beyond you, for now. He said, hiding a wince at the crestfallen look in her eyes. I'm beyond you too. Zoro deadpanned, getting his attention. Cocky punk. He growled, clenching his jit, you had me dead to rights when you forced my jit into me. Why didn't you kill me? Zoro rolled his eyes this time, I already said it's a waste of air to explain to someone who doesn't understand. He said, much to Smoker's frustration. Ah. Tashigi hesitantly raised her hand. I wouldn't take a win like that either, sir. She cringed at the glare he shot her. Oh ho, that brings you up another notch, look-alike. I'm impressed. Zoro snickered at her. Hey. Tashigi snapped at him, completely incensed at the nickname. You could at least remember my name. Fucking sword nuts. Smoker growled out, Tashigi, explain. Ah. She twitched, looking back at him. Well, if what he told me when he beat me was true, beating you by touching you with your jit means nothing to him. Right. Zoro rolled his eyes again. It proves nothing. I'm not any stronger. You're definitely not stronger. All it proves is that your shitty toy can win. At the end of the day, if I beat you because of it, then it means I wouldn't have beaten you without it. Now can we get back to fighting already? Smoker deadpanned, I'm here to arrest you and send you to either prison for life or an execution, and you're more worried about honor. He started to generate more smoke. You sword nuts are fools. Honor has its place, but not in battle. At the end of the day, you'll be behind bars because you missed your one chance to kill me. HMPH. Zoro snorted, we'll see about that. They'd all gotten a chance to catch their breath by now, and even he could admit this wasn't working. Smoker was weak as hell when you could stop him from using his fruit effectively, which Zoro definitely could. But at the same time, he wasn't getting anywhere. And he had to take a few seconds to knock Tashigi out on top of it. This was going to be a pain in the ass. He grinned viciously. Luckily, it didn't have to be. I can cut him. He told himself firmly. He just had to tap into that state of mind again. He gripped his swords tighter as he firmed up his stance. I definitely can cut him. A said so. Said I was close. There's nothing I cannot cut. Smoker turned into a whirlwind of smoke, forming a smoke tornado in the middle of the street. He rapidly advanced on Zoro, who swiped at it, cutting it in half. But it merely continued to spin, unharmed. Damn it. Zoro cursed in his own head once more. I just need to find that state of mind again. That's easy. He firmed up his body, barely even jerking as a flying fist from Smoker came racing in from behind and struck him in the back. His tech eye was far too strong for the Marine captain. In the whirling smokescreen, Smoker ground his teeth together, biting through his cigars as he threw punch after punch and kick after kick, only for Zoro to take them as if they were no threat at all. No matter the dull thuds as they impacted, Smoker felt as if he was making zero progress denting his foe's defense. And even my jit won't help. He has no devil fruit. Smoker cursed inside his head. How was it possible for this man to have come out of the same sea he'd been patrolling for so long? He backed away, ceasing his apparently useless attacks. Zoro relaxed his muscles. Tech eye was a useful technique, but he hadn't figured out how to really do much else while using it. He spied the frustration on Smoker's face and grinned through his blade. What's wrong, Captain? Not as easy as you thought it would be. His grin widened even further, figured out that your little toy can't help you against a superior opponent with no devil fruit. I don't see what you're so smug about. Smoker barked back at him, we're in a stalemate, clearly. And that'll end once reinforcements arrive. There's only one of you, but hundreds of us. And what worth are hundreds when I could take them all out with one swipe of my sword? The green-haired man shot back, you, that pink-haired chick, and the lookalike are the only ones worth a fight, and Robin will be finished with Cherry Blossom before you know it. White launcher. Smoker bellowed, jetting forward at a pace that would have been considered quite fast in East Blue. It was probably still fast even for this half of the Grand Line. But to Zoro, who had been training with Luffy since he met the man, it was positively glacial. Smoker roared as he reared back with his jit, aiming to knock Zoro out with one harsh blow to the head. Zoro blocked it with his vastly superior strength, but it had been a feint. Smoker let go of the jit, allowing Zoro to fling it out of the gigantic cloud. White snare. The white-haired man growled out. But the Zoro stumbled a bit as Smoker's entire body turned into smoke, which felt more like molasses than the airy mixture it should have been. His entire body and head were engulfed, and moving felt like a fight in and of itself. Can't breathe. It stinks. He hated smoke, and this choking feeling was the worst. He was going to pass out like this. He bent his knees before leaping into the air with all of his power. His Zoro blasted him more than halfway out of the smoke, allowing him to get in a gasp of air and to hack out a lot of the smoke, though it wasn't a completely clean getaway. No, you don't. Smoker roared, continuing to chase him to engulf him once more. Tame. Zoro rasped out his new improvised technique name. Instead of forming a platform of air for him to jump off, a massive blast of air erupted from his feet. The last of the smoke that had been gripping his ankles was blasted away, and the rest of the following mass struck the ground with enough speed and force to crack it. Smoker reformed out of it, swearing noisily. Your smoke reeks, you shit marine. Zoro yelled at him furiously, his face and teeth looking shark-like. He quickly raised his right blade, blocking Tashigi's attack. Don't forget about me, Rorana. She yelled at him, face red and veins bulging, as she struggled to make even an inch of headway against him. I don't have time for you right now. He yelled back, jerking his arm and parrying her blade in such a way that she lost her balance, the tip of their blades going straight into the ground. He let go of Yubashiri, grabbing her by the throat and lifting her off the ground. Get stronger if you want to fight me. She squeaked in shock, the only bit of air she managed to get out before Zoro bodily threw her at Smoker, who had been charging at them. The smoke man caught her, but by sheer bad luck, he hadn't fully gotten his reacquired jit out of the way and her head smacked into it, knocking her out. Tashigi. Smoker yelled before noticing she was out cold. Damn it. He gently placed her against one of the buildings, not taking his eyes off Zoro, who merely drew her sword and threw it at him. Smoker glared, Charity, Ruranoa? He asked as he caught it, laying it on her lap. Hardly. Zoro grabbed Yubashiri and drew it out of the ground, she was in the way. He took a deep breath, settling himself, you're an annoying enough bastard to deal with without her making a nuisance of herself. You're annoying yourself. Smoker grinned through another cigar, luckily, I know how to beat you now. He placed his hands on the ground, white bog. He intoned, before his arms turned into smoke. But Zoro could clearly see it wasn't the wispy kind. No, it looked more like the goopy kind that Smoker had just tried to choke him out with. The entire street started to flood with that almost liquid smoke. Civilians had long since left the area, but if any had still been trying to run away, their feet would have been stuck as if it was cement. As the wave of smoke started to get near him, Zoro jumped onto one of the buildings, putting him high above the streets. What the hell are you doing? He questioned the man, are you going to drown the whole city in smoke just to have a shot at capturing me? I don't need the entire town. Smoker yelled, and for the first time, Zoro felt uncomfortable as the level of smoke started to rise, much higher far away. A massive wall of smoke started to rise in every direction which Zoro looked at. Smoker was trying to trap him. Hyakuhachi pound HM. Zoro blasted him again with his triple air blade attack, but Smoker didn't even bother to get up. The attacks carved into him and dispersed harmlessly after carving into the ground. Damn it. The clouds continued to build. The smoke was about midway up the building he was standing on. He could see Tashigi floating on top of them, but Smoker was essentially invisible now in the smoke. But he could still hear his voice, white wave. It echoed from every bit of the smoky swamp. Shit. Zoro yelled, having to leap from his building and land on another as the smoke rushed forward, smashing into the one he had been standing on like an actual tsunami wave. His old island of safety got crushed as planks of wood exploded and the building vanished beneath the swamp. He looked up, ready to get him out of the way, and blanched when he realized Smoker had closed off that avenue of escape as well. The sky was as gray as the streets. Shit. He quickly sheathed Yubashiri and put both hands on Kitetsu, his most bloodthirsty blade, Ichi Gorilla. Nai Gorilla. He growled out. Both of his arms positively bulged with muscle as he gripped the hilt tightly. Yakadori. The crescent-shaped blade that almost looked like it was glowing blue hit the area Smoker had been standing in. The entire bog split in half, along with a couple feet of the earth below it. But Smoker was nowhere to be seen. White tsunami. Smoker's voice rang from every direction and the smoke surged, crushing not only Zoro's perch, but all of the ones in the encirclement too. Epm. Zoro called out and started hopping in the air, wondering what the hell he was going to do. Even he couldn't keep this up indefinitely. Luffy might have been able to, but Luffy had his devil fruit to just not let things get to this point in the first place. And Smoker wasn't about to let the chance pass, white snakes. He called out, and long bursts of cloud erupted from the sea below, shooting at him with gaping maws and shark teeth. Shit. Zoro dodged and dodged some more as the snakes chased him. His breath was coming in sharp gasps now, getting to Kingmuch of his energy as he redrew Yubashiri. Come on. I've managed it twice already. All I have to do is find this bastard and cut him. He threw another Sanji Croku pound HM at the smoke, accomplishing even less than last time. And then a smoke snake caught onto his right leg, preventing it from moving and throwing off his Geppm. He sucked in a big breath of air and clamped his mouth shut as another snake grabbed his other ankle and then a final one grabbed his right arm. All three yanked him down into the bog below, smashing him into the ground hard enough that he gasped for air. He got only smoke. I told you, Ruranoa. Smoker echoed solemnly from every direction that you would regret not killing me when you had the chance. Zoro rolled to his feet, but his lungs were burning. The smoke was irritating everything, making tears and snot run down his face. He rasped, leaping into the air and trying to get a breath, but the snakes pulled him back down. He started getting lightheaded and his vision started to swim. Or it would have been if there was anything other than gray to see. He gradually slowed, his movements growing sluggish. His eyes closed. He could still feel his heartbeat and in desperation, he tried one last thing. He couldn't even waste the air on his technique name as he grunted, spinning his swords and creating the largest Tatsumaki he'd ever made. The whirlwind pushed all of the smoke away, allowing air from above to rush in. He coughed and rasped and hacked to get the smoke out of his lungs as his tornado faded away and the smoke just rushed back in. I will not lose. He roared in his own mind, finally finding that feeling from Drum Island once more. He hadn't fully gotten it when showing Ace, and he was getting fucking tired of having to be near death to do it. If he couldn't do it on command, it was fucking useless. But for today, he'd take it. And mark his words, he would train himself into his damned grave before he got caught like this again. In his mind's eye, Smoker and Tashigi were both glowing blue. Smoker was the source of the smoke, which was almost like Fritz on his senses, but he stood out all the same. For the first time, his blades glowed black with wisps of Busumshoku coating, and he charged forward with a Zoro. Smoker felt him move in his smoke and realized something was wrong, but too late to move. He quickly raised his jit to block Zoro, not knowing how in the hell the man even found him among the rest of his smoke. Rengoku Onigiri. Zoro yelled, cutting clean through Smoker's jit and appearing behind him. A shockwave blasted all the smoke away and an X-shaped stream of blood floated in the air between them. Smoker's eyes went completely wide as he opened his mouth reflexively, his cigars flying from them and landing on the ground. His jit was also cut into 3 parts, with the one in his hand falling from limp fingers and the other 2 spinning through the air and clattering on the floor. His right shoulder, left underarm, and the middle of his chest erupted with blood as he fell to his knees before crumbling to the floor and face-planting. The smoke hadn't magically vanished with Smoker's defeat and it slowly engulfed them again, though it lost that strange consistency and was actually wafting away now. Zoro took a step forward as his vision tripled before he stumbled and fell forward himself. Tashigi herself had also fallen from her floating cloud of smoke as it became normal smoke and crashed to the ground. All 3 of them would have died if they hadn't all been thrown from the smoke onto the nearest buildings. Robin caught Zoro gently and laid him on the roof before putting her hands on his sternum and pushing down multiple times. A puff of smoke left his lips and he coughed, gasping in a breath. She sighed in relief as he started breathing normally as she crossed her arms and checked the other 2. Neither of them had gotten as much smoke as Zoro did and were both breathing normally. Or, well, Tashigi was. Smoker was rasping from his injuries. He groaned, opening his eyes. Seeing who was above him, he laughed a little weakly, got any sake. Robin rolled her eyes, well, you're fine. She gently slapped her hand on the middle of his face and used him as a handhold to stand up. He glared at her and grabbed her offered hand to get up himself, well, you look like you had fun. Her arms were littered with small bruises, but she didn't look very disheveled at all. Yes, well, Hina wasn't as much fun as your opponent. The 2 of them started to walk away, though she had to keep a firm hand on him as he stumbled multiple times as his legs refused to cooperate. Thankfully, that went away quickly enough as they walked, with Robin starting to explain what had happened after they separated. Earlier? Well, now that the boys are gone, Hina drawled, shall we, Master Chief Petiofi? She looked over at Tashigi, only to sweat drop as she saw the other woman disappear around a corner, clearly following Smoker and Zoro. What? She asked flatly. Yufufufu, Robin let out a little smug giggle, well, she could hardly stand to see her boyfriend lose to someone else. Poor thing is just going to get in the way. She sounded entirely too amused at the situation. What? Hina's voice was even flatter now. She then shook her head, no, never mind. I suppose it makes sense that Smoker-kun's protege would be a little too like him. She stared at Robin, Hina irritated again. Hina will have to take you down quickly to go reprimand her for getting in the way of a superior's fight for a personal issue. By all means, Hina. Robin's smile widened as she crossed her arms, try. Dozens of arms rose from the ground surrounding Hina, let's test out that ability of yours, shall we? 6 of them shot forward with open palms, aiming to smack the stuffing out of Hina this time, each aiming at a different body part. Hina steeled herself, taking the strikes. Robin watched carefully as each and every part of her body that she hit started to bend as if she were made out of clay. Within moments, all of Robin's arms that she had used to attack with were shackled, having passed through Hina's body entirely, except for the ones in Hina's chest. The woman sidestepped, completing the capture on those limbs. Robin's devil fruit transferred over all damage that her limbs accumulated to her main body. Unlike the first time, she didn't disperse the limbs immediately and felt some sort of weakening effect on her body. Like she was using Tech-Eye on the spots that were shackled, preventing movement. She dispersed them, feeling that strange effect vanish immediately. Yes, frustrating indeed. The waste bay Ori. Hina called out, flinging her arms out and having 100 feet of iron-like cages erupt from under her sleeves. Robin was very quickly surrounded by the cages and then Hina crossed her arms, bringing the strangely flexible cages slamming shut on the dark-haired woman. Robin jumped, immediately forming a line of arms that each grasped one another. Wonderful. She let out a bit of an exasperated groan as her line of arms pulled her out of the way of Hina's binding attack. She has ranged attacks too, and if those bind me, I will apparently be unable to move. She let out a sigh. Perhaps I should have started with Zoro as everyone suggested, rather than Tekai. You won't escape. Hina yelled, turning her arm towards Robin and sending her cage following. Oh, bother. Robin sighed, sighing fleur wisteria. 100 arms formed out of the various buildings and started making arm links. They grabbed onto her, forming almost a spiderweb-like structure as they crept along. She darted every which way, evading Hina's cages. Every time her arms got captured, they would just disperse into her few flowers and be replaced by new ones. Hina very displeased. Hina growled out, retracting her cages as this was very clearly not working. Robin landed, we do seem to be a case of the unstoppable force and the immovable object. Robin agreed, I am curious. Has anyone ever broken free of those cages? Hina scoffed, even if they had, why would Hina say so? I'll take that as a no, I suppose. Robin smiled, though I rather doubt you faced anyone like my captain before. And when did the devil child herself join a rookie pirate crew? Hina asked back. Both of them were pretty much stalling for time, trying to think of a plan to beat the other woman. I'll thank you not to call me that. Robin said, though her tone was a slight bit frostier now, baigned Fleur. Her 20 bloomed arms formed into a single, rather large one. Unmano. It shot forward, piercing through Hina. If multiple arms didn't work, why would one big one? Hina asked smugly, starting to form her shackles. Who said anything about one? Robin smirked and delighted in watching Hina's eyes bulge in shock as all of the arms unraveled from their joined form, turning into individual arms and launching themselves away in random directions. Hina's body bulged and distorted almost grotesquely as she screamed in shock and a little pain, but in the end all of the arms were still caged and dispersed. But it had clearly taken its toll. Hina dropped to one knee, panting harshly. She was unharmed, and yet phantom pain from the surprise unraveling was aching inside of her body. She glared at her opponent, Hina underestimated you. She glared as she stood firmly, how foolish. Hina embarrassed. What a scary power. Indeed. Robin smiled back at her, Achenta Fleur. Quat Romanus. What will you do, Hina? The 4 very large arms formed a circle around Hina, one at each quadrant. The one to Hina's front right and back left attacked simultaneously. Don't underestimate Hina. The Pincat yelled, Hiya. She cried out, blocking the front one with her right leg and chopping the back one with her left arm. Robin hissed in surprise pain as her real arms bruised up, my, you're far more talented than Smoker-san. Robin complimented her, why, if it wasn't for his devil fruit, I doubt he'd even be a captain with how easily my own men handled him. Hina appreciates the compliment, though Hina could do without the insult to Hina's friend. Hina shot back, glaring at her. She prepared to use another attack, tensing her legs to send her cages into the ground. She could still direct them and would erupt them beneath Robin's feet. My apologies, Robin was smiling like the cat that got the canary, though I'm thankful, Hina. She saw the tensed muscles and directed her large arms to both attack Hina's feet. Hina was forced to abort, jumping into the air to avoid the swatting arms. I had believed your defense to be almost Loja-like in ability, but that clearly isn't the case. Hina started to sweat, which makes me wonder how well can you multitask. Hina was confused, up until phantom limbs growing from her own body grabbed onto her arms, legs, and even her head. She was held spread eagle, with one bigger arm holding her jaw shut. Sign Fleur. Robin called out, Quat Romanus. Grab. The 4 huge arms descended, while the smaller ones prevented her from moving. If she did nothing, those huge arms would hit her. If she used her power, then the huge arms would unravel inside of her. No matter what she did, she was going to lose. No. Hina won't accept this. She had never trained in Tekai or really any of the Rocky Shiki, but she knew the theory. She forced her muscles across her entire body to steel themselves. Unfortunately, her technique failed almost immediately. She just didn't have the practice with it, having relied on her devil fruit's defenses. As the first gasps of pain forced themselves from her locked jaw, she vowed to get stronger, and then everything went dark. Robin kept hitting her for a few seconds before allowing her arms to all disperse when she was sure Hina was unconscious. She let out a breath, smiling, my, that was almost therapeutic. She turned to look at the direction Zoro was fighting in and blanched when she saw the masses of smoke covering the skyline in a vaguely cube-like structure. Oh my. I'm sure Zoro won't appreciate me interfering with his fight, but he'll just have to get over it. She quickly ran in that direction, following her captain's final message. She would not lose another crewmate. Never again. Hell, go. Vivi yelled, grabbing the man and practically trying to throw him as the ground started to rumble. Princess, the Falcon started to say, but Vivi simply screamed at him. Go. Don't you dare die, Princess. He yelled, diving into the upper courtyard and assuming his full Falcon form and zooming into the sky. He rocketed away, greatly picking up speed and disappearing into the horizon. Vivi, we need to go too. Nami yelled and jumped off of the veranda they had burst out into. Vivi and Chaka quickly followed, and not a moment too soon. Just 3 seconds later, the palace utterly erupted with sand, bulging as beach loads of the stuff burst from every open window and broke open every door. It practically started to weep in sand. Vivi, Chaka, and Nami all landed in the courtyard and booked it, running from the avalanche of sand. And then they heard it, Nefertari Vivi. Crocodile's voice sounded almost insane with rage as the man followed them onto the courtyard. He looked like a mess. He was sweating heavily. His perfect hair was in disarray. And his gaping wound was no longer bleeding, though only because it had been stuffed with sand. He looked like a monster, with his one remaining eye having multiple burst blood vessels inside and was gleaming red. Nothing in his life had ever made him so furious. Run, Princess. Chaka roared as he turned. No, Chaka. Vivi screamed as he fell back, run, damn it. Chaka transformed into his hybrid form and bled himself on his claws so that he would be able to actually touch the man, I'll. Crocodile raced forward at such a fast pace that Chaka couldn't even blink before the man was inside his guard. Die. Crocodile spat, thrusting his arm straight through Chaka's chest. Chaka's heart burst out of his back along with bits of spine, held firmly in Crocodile's sandy grasp. Princess Chaka let out a final death rattle as he resumed his human form. He collapsed, hanging macabrely on Crocodile's arm. Chaka. Vivi and Nami screamed in shock at seeing the man die so quickly. Crocodile ripped his arm out and crushed the organ in his grasp, panting heavily and glaring at them dementedly. Congratulations, Princess. He spat, not even my bout with Whitebeard left me so furious. I won't kill you. He stomped forward, no, you're going to wish I merely killed you. Desert Entierro. A massive wave of sand erupted from his body, forming into a tsunami wave that really would bury them alive. Nami and Vivi turned and ran, using Zoro to get to the edge of the upper courtyard and jumping. Both of them hit the lower courtyard and made for the stairs leading down into the rest of Alubarna. Desert prison. The sands above them rushed forward, encircling them and blocking off the stairs. Epm. The girls cried out, fleeing into the sky despite the pain in Vivi's legs. Pain was better than whatever Crocodile had planned for them. But Crocodile appeared out of the sands in front of them, roaring in fury. Hiya. Vivi squealed as he backhanded her into Nami, sending them crashing back to the courtyard grass. Oof. Shit. Nami rasped as Vivi had landed on top of her. Damn it, we need to get out of here. Is there any sort of fountain nearby? Yeah, Vivi coughed, knowing Nami was looking to suck up some water for another Mizu no Yari. It's inside the palace directly behind us. Do you need a distraction? I still have some of his blood on my slashers. She glared at Crocodile as they stood shakily. Let's do it. Nami whispered back, Mirage tempo. She mumbled under her breath, leaving behind a mirage that ran at Crocodile. Mizu no Yari. The mirage called out, launching a jet of water at Crocodile. Vivi used Zoro, hoping to catch Crocodile by surprise before he realized it was fake. Vivi rushed forward, but Crocodile ignored the jet of fake water, glaring at her as she appeared. His fingers were held straight out and coated in sand, desert spada. He called out, and the extremely sharp blade of grinding sand molecules cut Vivi's arm right off. Vivi gasped, appearing in the air and literally skidding to a halt and then using Zoro in the other direction to run away as her premonition ended. Crocodile ignored her, rushing unerringly for the hidden Nami. Nami screamed in shock, horror, and pain as he grabbed her arm, sucking every bit of moisture from it with his hand. He then whipped her bodily at Vivi, throwing both of them to the ground. Nami was trembling, Kenbenshoku she realized. They'd actually pissed him off enough for him to use his Kenbenshoku on them. Oh yes. Crocodile stalked forward, I'm surprised rookies like you even know of it. What a fucking insult for you two fucking rookie bitches to force this out of me. A vein was pulsing angrily on his forehead, this is the worst insult I've ever suffered. He stalked over to them and grabbed Nami by the throat, lifting her off the ground. He kicked Vivi hard, rolling her away from them when the brunette tried to reach for her slashers. Vivi could only cough harshly from the injury. She was going to have a massive bruise if they got out of this alive. Nami was choking. Her unwithered arm was trying to pry open his fingers while the other hung limply at her side. She managed to rasp out, Renkyaku she kicked straight upwards, generating a wind blade that cut Crocodile in half. But his grip didn't loosen at all and she hadn't been trying to hurt him anyway. Just distract him. Gep. With her other leg, she kicked forward, ripping herself out of his grasp and away. But to her horror, he had simply allowed his hand to rip itself from his forearm and it was still around her neck. She jerked to a stop, nearly giving herself whiplash as his hand dragged her back to him. He squeezed even tighter, making Nami feel like her eyes were going to pop out. Crocodile was ranting and raving by this point, "I won't kill you." He nearly looked rabid as froth appeared near his mouth. "No, no, no. Death is too good for you bitches. I'm going to strip every inch of skin from your damn bodies millimeter by millim." He cut himself off, actually having to block an attack with his hook as VV's bloody slashers aimed for his nose. He unconsciously eased up on Nami's neck. Nami jerked her clean attack, overclocking it way past its safety limits and mixing cool balls with the hot desert air. Dusk had fallen already, but that didn't mean it had already gone cold. The clean attack shattered, disgorging a small spray of water. It felt wonderful on her skin and her arm absorbed most of it, returning to normal. But some of it got on Crocodile as well. She kicked up, kneeing him in the forearm and then jerking his hand once his grip loosened. Despite the disgust, she bit down on his finger. Crocodile howled as he reinforced his hand with Busumshoku before she could actually gnaw the digit off. She immediately let go of his hand and threw both feet forward, Gepm. His still wet chest couldn't disperse and the force knocked him back and Nami away from him. He slid to a stop, now shaking in positively apoplectic rage. VV threw her bloodied and now wet slashers at him, but he raised his black hand and caught them without even a hint of injury. The slashers turned to dust, with a line of sand whipping towards VV, forcing her to drop her broken weapon. He trembled as he spoke through gnashing teeth. Hell, they were probably in danger of turning to dust themselves. "I will break you." He hissed, "I'll visit every torment imaginable on you. I'll leave you in the desert sun to be pecked at by those vultures, only to force medicine and food into you, so I can keep doing it for eternity." The rumble in the air slowly started drowning him out and by the time he got halfway through the sentence, neither of the girls could hear him. And then they noticed it getting bright. They both went wide-eyed seeing a sun growing in the distance and grinned in elation. Nami grabbed VV and bolted in the other direction with Soru, Renkyaku. She cried out, cutting through the sand wall encircling them and bursting through the other side to the stairs. Crocodile was so furious and hyper-focused on them that he noticed none of this up until he saw their smiles and immediate retreat. And then his Kenbenshoku screamed. He dispersed into sand completely, right before a meteor hit the lower courtyard and shook the entire city. Half of the soldiers almost stumbled to the ground. Parts of the weakened palace collapsed, and the raised plateau that the palace sat on had multiple failures, cracking and crumbling down to Alubarna proper. When the smoke cleared and the dust settled, Luffy was sitting in a crater. He had somehow sensed the agony his girls were in as he grew closer, forcing him to go even faster. He had crashed into the plaza the moment he sensed Nami and Vivi running. It left him confused and wondering how it was even possible that he had felt their pain from the outskirts. Was that part of Kenbenshoku? Well, no matter. He glared at Crocodile as he reformed. "You." The villain snarled, "How did you escape?" Luffy punched one of his hands, cracking every knuckle. "I hope you're ready, coward." He spat without bothering to answer the question. And then it was on, with his blistering sore leaving anything Crocodile had seen from the girls in the dust. "You fucking cocky little rookie." Crocodile snarled, uncaring of his image at the moment. He was a mess. His right eye was missing. His normally coiffed and greased hair was hanging limply like wet fur, except it was even worse because of blood and sand caked onto it. His fancy, expensive clothes were a mess. The two bitches who had done all of this to him had actually managed to escape him. And worst of all, his cigars were wet, sandy, and now unusable. He glared hatefully at Luffy. "I'm almost glad you survived, because now I can kill you myself." Luffy cracked his knuckles. "You hurt my nakama." He growled out, "Time to." Nakama Crocodile snapped, Nakama, his right arm started disgorging sand, desert spada. He roared, and the sand erupted. The grinding wave of sand raced towards Luffy, cutting everything in its path. It left a heavy scar in the stone of the plateau the palace sat on. Luffy calmly took 2 steps to the left and the attack missed entirely. It continued onward and cut straight through one of the guardhouses before the sand rained off the plateau. "All my plans, all this work for 16 years, and on the eve of my victory I'm being challenged by fucking dreamers." He raised his hook and sped forward. But Luffy had enough of standing still and he vanished from sight. Crocodile's Kenbenshoku warned him of the attack, as it had for Vivi and Nami's attacks, but Luffy's speed was on a whole other level. "Shigen," he said darkly, his finger piercing through Crocodile's heart before the man even comprehended what his Kenbenshoku was telling him. But Crocodile had been on guard this entire fight. He had already turned into sand. His chest slightly blew apart as the grains rained down onto the ground. "So, it wasn't a fluke. You're the one who taught those bitches these marine moves. You know all 6 of the fucking things," he said, swinging his golden hook with a snarl. "That guy." Luffy called out just as the hook caught him in the face, failing to penetrate even a millimeter. In fact, Crocodile let out a groan as the hook rebounded from the impact, throwing him off balance. Luffy quickly followed up with a punch that blew Crocodile's sandy head off. Grrr. Renkyaku. He yelled, cutting Crocodile in half before leaping back. DCH, so this is how annoying it is to fight a Loja. Shitty, Croc. He muttered to himself, watching as Crocodile reformed. Smokey had nothing on this guy. Crocodile smirked as he saw the annoyance on Luffy's face. Little shit. You were so confident too. You rookie dreamers are all the same. Wide-eyed and excited until the real world punches you in the throat. Luffy remembered Zoro's bout with Mihawk and smirked, like what happened to you. Crocodile's smile vanished, an infuriated vein appearing and beginning to pulse on his forehead. You're nowhere near as strong as Hawkeye. Crocodile swallowed his tongue, if only you had called him that to his face. He said as he realized who Luffy had to be talking about. I would have paid to watch him cut your head off. What, because you don't have the guts after Whitebeard made you his bitch? Thank you, Robin. Luffy hadn't known a damn thing about Crocodile before she filled him in and even gave him some insults to use. All these little details that were making Crocodile go purple in fury were going to make him laugh. Maybe he could even make that little pulsing blood vessel on his forehead pop. Die. Crocodile roared, Bargain Posada. He swiped his arm forward and an absolutely titanic crescent-shaped sickle of sand raced forward. It swiped through a couple palm trees on its way to Luffy and the second it touched them, they turned into dried-out husks. Luffy's eyes went wide as the extremely fast attack caught him in the chest and then his form wavered as if it were a mirage. What? Hami Zanshin. Luffy grinned widely as he appeared behind Crocodile, holding his arms up in a strange position behind the man's back. He looked like he was holding some sort of wheel in tight fists. Rokungan. He roared and his arms seemed to pulse. Crocodile exploded. He quite literally blew apart into tens of thousands of particles of sand which rained down on everything. That hurt you little shit. And it actually had. A very small amount. The shockwave had been almost like what Fishman Karate could generate and had affected him very slightly through his Loja defense. If there had been more moisture in the air, it might even have hurt a lot. The clump of sand turned into Crocodile's hand, which touched the stone they stood on, ground secco. Immediately, the ground started to change color, with cracks appearing all over it as though it was drying out. Which was exactly what Crocodile was doing. In fact, a giant circle all around the limb was turning to sand before Luffy's very eyes, threatening to swallow him in a quicksand trap. Damn it. Luffy snarled, leaping into the air and continuing to stay airborne with Gepm. The ground was obviously no longer safe. Even Rokungan didn't work. What the heck can I do without water? Face it, Straw Hat. Crocodile rose out of his sand pit with a wicked smirk on his face. You're too weak. Too weak for any of your dreams. Too weak to save this country for that bitch. You're going to die here. He raised his palm and a small sandstorm started to swirl above it, but not before I make those two bitches of yours watch me carve you like a pumpkin. Sables. He threw his arm forward and the sandstorm rapidly grew into a sandy tornado. The sand obscured his sight of Luffy. And then night turned into day. Enten no Kon. Luffy's voice roared and Crocodile howled as his retinas were seared from the bright light directly in front of him. His Kenbun-shoku was screaming at him to get the fuck away from where he was and he skated back rapidly on a bed of sand. The sun traveled down rapidly, melting sand into glass everywhere before expanding and perfectly melting a crater inside of Crocodile's sand pit. Molten glass rained down on the palace, causing the dry grass nearby to catch into flames immediately. Crocodile rapidly cleared his vision, rubbing his eyes before he looked at the result. The molten, glowing, visibly distorted crater due to the heat haze above it. The crater wasn't the same size as his sand pool and they could both see the sand surrounding it glowing red hot and beginning to melt from the radiating heat. The two stared, with a bead of sweat starting to appear on Crocodile's brow. Luffy stood stock still for a moment, looking at the glowing crater, and then Crocodile, who developed another bead of sweat before looking back at the crater. And then back at Crocodile, who was really starting to perspire for reasons that had nothing to do with the heat. And then a wide, silly smile slowly started to appear on Luffy's face. Shishy. Shy Crocodile started to swear, immediately focusing as hard as he could on the fight to give his Kenbun-shoku the best possible chance to defend him. It almost wasn't enough as Busum-shoku covered his left arm. Shishy. Luffy laughed gaily as his glowing golden legs smashed into Crocodile's hastily raised defenses and almost completely ignored them. Brah. Crocodile howled in agony as he dispersed, reappearing 30 meters away and clutching his left arm, which was a mistake as his fingers started to burn too. He hurriedly created a sand hole with ground secco and scooped the sand to the wound, drawing the heat away. He trembled as the pain radiated through his arm and he was forced to tear his clothes even more by ripping off his sleeve. With a furious growl, he stood and glared at Luffy. What the hell are you? he asked through gritted teeth as he let the sand fall away, revealing that his limb had a huge red blistered splotch all over it. Hehehe. Luffy's shit-eating grin was back on his face, Logia he sing-songed, wagging his tongue at the man, whose fury and now actual, legitimate fear of defeat was palpable. "I'm Monkey D. Luffy, the man who's going to kick your ass and save this country," he said, all traces of amusement gone in an instant, "and the man who's going to become the Pirate King." "Damn," Nami said, looking at the remains of her claim intact. Forget repairing it, Usopp was going to have to make her a whole new one once this was all over. She didn't even have enough length left to use it as a short staff, much less her usual long one. With a sigh, she replaced the last remaining piece under her skirt, really hoping she wouldn't need the two broken bits again. "We have to stop this." Vivi was still in pain. The hurt her body felt after Crocodile was one thing, but the pain her heart was feeling was way worse. "There has to be something we can do. We're not going to be doing anything without some water first." Nami grimaced, "My claim attack helped, but my arm still hurts. And now I don't even have much of it left to fight with. Damn that sandy fuck." Vivi shook her head, taking Nami's arm and pulling her to the left. Nami sighed in relief as Vivi led her to a small well, and they wasted no time getting the bucket out of it, filled with the life-saving liquid. "Never thought I'd ever force a Shichibukai to take me seriously," she mumbled after getting some water in her. "Ha." Nami barked out a laugh, dribbling water all over her weakened arm after taking a few gulps herself. "Honey, a few months ago I thought I'd never even be free of a guy who Crocodile makes look like a child. This is all insane." Their strength regained, they both started to run towards the fighting. Vivi was having to fight just to stay standing. The headache she had was utterly piercing from all of the pain and suffering she was sensing all around her. Then, her eyes widened as she saw a small group running towards them. "Kamza," she shouted, elated at having found her old friend, "you have to stop this. This can't go on." "Princess," Kamza shouted, his jaw dropping momentarily. "Aside," said Princess. Nami frowned. The way Vivi had talked made it seem like she and this Kamza were closer friends than that. Wasn't that too formal? "Yes, it's me. Vivi." Vivi shouted at him, picking up the pace, "Our people can't keep killing themselves like this. We have to end this now." "How can we?" Kamza yelled at her, "Your father is a traitor. He stole the rain from all of the neighboring towns. And he just went and burned Nanohana. We were willing to talk. Why would he do that?" "It wasn't him." She slowed, "There's an impostor going around with a devil fruit. He can." Her burgeoning Kenbenshoku warned her of an attack and she ducked under a kick she knew full well her old friend wasn't flexible enough to pull off. "Impersonate anyone?" she growled, glaring at the man. "I knew it," Nami said, before vanishing. Kamza gasped as his men were quickly dispatched, with Nami utilizing Soru to beat them all unconscious with punishing strikes as Vivi stood stock still, allowing her girlfriend to defend her. There was no way her old friend would call her princess. "Stop joking, AROOOOOOUND," the impostor cried out, "My babies. What have you done to them?" Vivi and Nami both cringed. "Ugh, you talk weird." The Myken-haired woman growled at him and then blanched as he touched his face with his left hand while simultaneously changing clothes with a flourish of his coat. Immediately, he became a man with a hideous-looking balloon-shaped pair of shorts that stopped at his thighs. They were connected to a shirt with an enlarged collar which was unbuttoned and showed off his chest. His legs were hairy and he wore ballerina slippers. His pink overcoat had two swans on either side of his head, facing outward. And his face was caked in makeup, with a stylized lipstick design covering just a small part of his lips. "Oh my god, I never thought I'd see someone dress worse than Buggy," Nami cried out. How did Robin stand it? Vivi was equally dumbfounded. "Stop joking, Aru," and Mr. 2 yelled at them, "That's insulting, you know." That was the point. Vivi and Nami yelled at him, "Find a fashion sense." "Oh, but it's you lovelies that need new eyes." Mr. 2 lifted one of his legs into the air behind his head and started to twirl. "A ballerina is the height of fashion. At least shave, damn it." Nami snarled before shaking her head, "What are we doing?" She grabbed Vivi by the arm, "Go, Vivi. I've got this." "What?" Vivi's gaze snapped to hers, "We can finish it quicker if we stay together. You're no use here. Only you can stop the fighting and find that damn bomb. Get going." Nami snapped at her. Vivi bit her lip, "Don't you dare lose." She turned and dashed away. Who the hell do you think I am?" Nami smirked, glaring at Mr. 2. "Stop joking, Aru," and he cried out, "I'm here to capture Vivi, not you. Stand aside." He rushed after Vivi, but Nami stood in his path. "I'm not normally one to hurt a pretty face, but a job's a job," he yelled, swinging his leg in a flash straight at Nami's nose. Nami raised her leg in a kick Sanji had taught her, catching his kick with her own. She grimaced at the impact but was successful in repelling it away. "Damn, he almost kicks as hard as Sanji." She muttered to herself, twisting her foot left and right. This is going to be tough. Buo, those are some strong legs, little lady. He grinned as wide as Luffy ever did, this might even be fun. Prepare yourself for my Akamawe Kenpo. Well, you have a theme at least. Nami snarked, getting into her combat stance and really wishing she could find herself a damn broom handle if nothing else. Vivi ran. She could hear the fighting, the sounds of clashing blades, firing guns, and the cacophony of the screams of agony. She could still feel every death. Each and every one of her people vanishing in her mind, feeling like little needles being driven into her brain. She tumbled, holding herself up against a wall and trying to keep from retching. She swallowed it and continued on. When she finally came into the main area, it was a mess. With Chaka dead and Pell away to find her father, someone needed to take command of the royal forces and negotiate with the rebels. It could only be her. She needed to find Kamza. She ducked, a bullet whizzing by where her shoulder had been a second ago, and she grimaced. With all the smoke and men throwing themselves at one another, there was no possible way she could find Kamza like this. She jumped, using Zoro to hop her way up a taller building, since she couldn't really manage Gepm. She got to the top, grimacing as she realized that she still wouldn't be able to find Kamza like this. It was too chaotic. Too many people moving. Too many noises. Stop it. She said, tears beginning to leak from her eyes. Stop it. She yelled, starting to sob, stop fighting. You're all getting tricked. She screamed, Crocodile betrayed us all. Stop it. Stop fighting. This fighting is senseless. We can't keep killing each other. But no one could hear her. Her shouts only caught a few nearby fighters' attention, and all it did was serve to distract them, stabbing Vivi in the brain as they took heinous injuries at best. Everyone just continued fighting. Vivi closed her eyes. Stop. She roared, and this time, something else erupted from her. A ripple through the air that radiated out for hundreds of meters. As it engulfed the fighting rebels and Royal Army members, hundreds of them just keeled over and fell limply onto the dusty, blood-splattered ground of Alubarna. It wasn't all of them. It wasn't half or even a quarter of them. But it was enough of them that they stopped and took notice, and they all turned to Bluenet kneeling above all of them on a tall building. Eeeed. She gasped for air, panting heavily as she opened her eyes and took in the sight of the stunned fighters before her. Huh. They stopped. Vivi Nefertari Vivi, a very familiar voice called out, and her eyes snapped to it. Immediately, both the rebels and the Royal Army members started to murmur, several of them even recognizing their princess. The princess. Princess Vivi, the rumblings of her name rose into the air. Mza. She leapt from the building, landing easily and rushing over towards him. Vivi, what was that? Kamza demanded of her as she reached him, looking warily at the downed men around them. What? Vivi blinked owlishly, what was what? What do you mean, what was what? Kamza asked her incredulously, opening his arms and gesturing at all the unconscious warriors. How did you do this? For a moment, Vivi looked around, dumbfounded. She looked like the hamster in her head had fallen off its wheel. Wait, I did this, she said incredulously, remembering Ace's explanation from the day before. Does this mean I have? She cut herself off, shaking her head. Stop distracting me. We don't have time for this. She yelled, we need to put a stop to this, now. She told her old friend firmly. Stop this, Kamza asked her incredulously, sweeping the other thing under the rug for the moment at the urgency in her tone. You've been missing for 3 years. He yelled at her, you don't know anything of what the king has been doing. You don't have the authority to order anyone here to do anything. Yes I do. Vivi snapped back at him, Chaka is dead. She declared, getting strangled gasps from the Royal Army, my father is missing, and Pell is out searching for him. That makes me the highest authority in Alubarna right now, and I am ordering the Royal Army to stand down. Still, the army hesitated to follow her orders. Only some of them recognized her personally, and she had no proof that their commander was dead, though the fact that he was currently missing was pretty strange. Kamza himself wasn't impressed. Missing? Missing? Your father just burned down Nanohana. No, he didn't. Vivi screamed back at him, it was an impostor using the main no mi. He can take anyone's face he wants. He even attacked me a few minutes ago using your face. My father has probably been missing for weeks. Immediately, murmurs increased in volume, with both the loyalists and the rebels looking at one another in shock, confusion, and a small amount of dread. The main know me. Kamza no longer looked angry and now just looked skeptical. That's an awfully convenient story. It's the truth. She said, before addressing everyone in earshot, this entire farce of a war has been orchestrated from the very beginning by an organization called Baroque Works. she declared, the dance powder appearing in Alubarna, the droughts, the convenient weapon deliveries, and fomenting unrest, everything is their fault. I've been missing because I spent the last 3 years infiltrating them. They are our enemies. Who has done this, my princess? One of the royals who recognized her asked before Kamza could speak, who has been undermining the king? Vivi grit her teeth, turning back to the palace and seeing the building sandstorm around her home, everything can be laid at Sir Crocodile's feet. She pointed, look. As one, everyone turned to look where she was pointing and saw the erupting sandstorm above the palace, followed by Luffy's sun powers turning night to day. Sand. Sir Crocodile, the country's hero. Kamza clenched his fists, he has no reason to be in Alubarna right now. You mean to tell me that he's behind all of this? He's no hero. Vivi spat hatefully, he's been behind everything. He defeats pirates in public to make himself look good, but the entire time he's been here, he's been plotting behind our backs. He built Baroque works in secret in order to take Alabasta over for himself. Every time we called him a hero, he was laughing in private. We never suspected a thing. Please Kamza. We fought as kids to see who would lead the Suna clan. We've been friends for years. You have to trust me. I want to. Kamza said, by Ra, I want to. But all you have are words. I can order the rebels to stand down, but Nanohana isn't going to accept words. Yuba isn't going to accept words. All of the destroyed towns buried in sand aren't going to accept words. We need proof. Vivi opened her mouth before it snapped shut and she vanished from before Kamza's eyes. Everyone gasped before a commotion drew their attention. One of the rebels had raised his rifle, taking aim at Vivi. He had been sliding towards the two leaders through the crowd as they spoke, trying to get into a better position. But Vivi had sensed his ill intent now that her burgeoning Kenbun-shoku wasn't trying to split her skull open. She dashed over to the man and grabbed his gun's barrel with her left hand, jerking it to the left and into the air, where he shot harmlessly. With lightning-fast movement, Vivi jabbed him in the throat with a web strike, compressing his larynx and causing him to choke and drop his gun. She followed up with a jab to the liver, which bent him over. Showing off her incredible flexibility, her heel crashed into his jaw as he bent, throwing him onto his back, jaw shattered, liver bruised, and throat hurting like hell. What the fuck? Vivi Kamza gaped at her back. She casually lowered her leg before their stunned gazes and stepped over the man, before reaching down and ripping his sleeve. Bingo. She grinned, look. She moved to allow the rushing Kamza to see the man's arm, which had the Baroque Works logo tattooed on it for reasons. The logo itself wasn't a Jolly Roger per se, but everyone knew it was essentially the same thing. It was a skull distinguished by rapiers in place of crossbones, surrounded by a set of light purple wings. Robin had never quite figured out what possessed the band of morons to think getting their secret logo permanently stamped over their bodies was a good idea. That logo. Kamza gasped, it was plastered all over the arms freighter that crashed into Nanohana Harbor. This is Baroque Works logo. Anyone wearing this or who has it tattooed onto them are traitors and must be arrested. Vivi declared. Immediately, a commotion erupted from both the rebels and the royal army as, knowing that the jig was up, the Baroque Works plants attacked. Immediately, the fighting started back up, but it was quickly subdued as there weren't that many millions and billions left. They had drastically cut down Baroque Works sailing into Alabasta, and the fighting had taken yet more of them out. Rapidly, the armies cut down the traitors, finding the tattoos somewhere on every single body. They played us all for fools. Kamza screamed, sinking to his knees and punching the ground, bloodying his knuckles. Several rebels dropped their weapons from limp fingers. Damn it. Vivi stood tall, I'll say it again. I am Nefertari Vivi, and in my father's absence, I am taking control here. Royal Army, stand down. She yelled, and this time, they didn't hesitate to stand to attention before her. She smiled for half a moment before yelling, everyone, begin the evacuation of Alubarna. And with that, everyone froze. My friends discovered the depths of Crocodile's treachery. He's been buying materials that can create a bomb capable of wiping us off the map. Get our people away from the city. Take only what you can carry and any necessities. Food and water should be prioritized. Anyone capable of searching, join me in finding that damn bomb. Rebels, follow her orders. Kamza took her warning incredibly seriously this time, we'll find it. He promised her as they all started running to follow their orders, before sighing, you know this isn't over, right? He asked her, sadly. Vivi's narrowed gaze snapped to him and she snarled, if anyone still wants to fight, they can deal with me. And another small ripple radiated from her and a shiver went down Kamza's spine. A small number of people fell over, unconscious. Vivi immediately panicked, wah. I didn't mean to do that. She hurried over to one of the downed men and tried to shake him awake. I'm so sorry. Kamza could only choke down an incredulous laugh as she shook the incensed man, Vivi, the bomb. Crap. Let's go. Vivi gave up on awakening the man and took off, quickly getting onto a roof to begin her search. Can we fucking switch already, Valerie? Usopp roared, his eyes practically popping through his goggles and his tongue zigzagging outside of his mouth. Neither of us are getting anywhere with this. He was dirty, his clothes were scuffed, and he was covered in soot from the damn exploding baseballs. No way. Valerie yelled back, equally matted with sweat, though she was otherwise pristine. She may not have hit Miss Merry Christmas yet, but she hadn't been hit either. This is just sad now, dearie. Miss Merry Christmas taunted her, you fight as bad as your chocolates taste. Valerie's face was covered in a mass of angry veins, pulsing angrily, die. She leapt into the air, aimed her parasol at her enemy, and then raced down for a piercing attack. You're not even doing anything differently. Miss Merry Christmas rolled her eyes behind her sunglasses before retreating into a hole made with her Mogu Mogu no Mi. Valerie once again penetrated the ground with a thunderous bang, rocking the ground and throwing up a huge plume of sand. She even created a large crater from her impact, but that was all it did as she panted furiously. Her enemy once again popped out of another hole, completely unscathed and laughing her head off. Oh, for crying out loud. Usopp groaned, dodging yet another ball. She's just too damn predictable for the stupid mole lady. I'm ya Mr. 4 was saying, and Usopp rolled his eyes. Yeah. I got it. He growled, not really in the best of moods either. We need to take one of them out. Just one. But that was easier said than done. I don't even know if the stupid spear could take the dog gun or the idiot out after all the mods I made to it. The useless thing was still on his back, but he was reluctant to use it with the damn exploding baseballs. I'm getting tired and my back hurts. Miss Merry Christmas yelled, time to finish this, Mr. 4. I want a massage after this. She ducked into the sand once more, avoiding another strong whack from Valerie. Only this time, she immediately popped back out and grabbed Valerie's ankles. Valerie started to yell before she closed her eyes from a burst of speed she was not expecting at all, windmilling her arms as her feet pulled out from underneath her and the rest of her lagged behind. Molehill Highway. The fat old lady yelled as she swam through the sand, dragging Valerie along with her. Mr. 4. Grab your 4-ton bat. It's time for the Moletown cleanup hitter. Valerie. Usopp yelled, aiming his slingshot. He fired a pellet, one small enough that the 155mm Datshin couldn't intercept. It hit Mr. 4, creating a smoke cloud. Mr. 4 swung his bat early because of Usopp's attack. His eyes went wide as he spun foolishly in a circle, having put all his strength into the attack with nothing to hit. Valerie wasn't idle either, 10,000 kilo shortstop. She yelled, smiling in elation, and she heard audible creaks and cracks from beneath her as the sudden stop wrenched Miss Merry Christmas's entire body. Unfortunately, the smoke also meant she barely saw that Mr. 4 was spinning and almost couldn't get her arms up. Kai. Valerie was flung backwards from the thunderous impact of Mr. 4's 4-ton bat. It hadn't even been a full swing. Just barely a backswing from him spinning like an idiot. And yet Valerie's left arm broke like a twig, leaving her screaming in pain on the sands a dozen meters away. 4. The man said cluelessly. Miss Merry Christmas wasn't much better off. My back. She yelled, crawling out of her hole on her hands and knees, holding onto her back. She was lucky she could even do that. Her entire torso had been tweaked, shoulders included. Ooh oh, my back. My back. Mr. 4. Help me. 4. Mr. 4 hurried to his knees, starting to massage the old broad. An audible crunching and cracking rang out, making Usopp cringe, even as he hurried to the dog, glad that neither were paying much attention. The Dachshund was, however, and it began barking. And then it sneezed, spitting a ticking baseball out. Usopp dodged it as he ran closer and closer, dodging explosions and showers of sand as he raced to the dog while the other two were out of commission. Finally. He yelled, Hisatsu. He yelled, pocket pepper. He flung a handful of chili powder at the dog, who immediately went wide-eyed and started sneezing like a machine gun. Usopp almost got blasted, but managed to jump over the gun dog and land beside it as it kept sneezing madly. Grunting from the strain, Usopp wrapped his arms around its neck. His lanky muscles from hard training aboard the Merry strained to the extreme as he aimed the massive cannon at Mr. 4 and Miss Merry Christmas. 4, Mr. 4 yelled as a baseball struck him in the face. Miss Merry Christmas's eyes popped out of her glasses as she looked up. She stuck her arm into the sand as the other grabbed at her partner. Boom. A massive conflagration engulfed them, rocking the entire arena. Usopp let out a sigh of relief, slumping against the dog. Which was a mistake. Grrrrrrrrr. His eyes popped open as he realized the sneezing had stopped and the dog had turned its head to him. They stared at each other, with the Dachshund glaring at him. Good doggy. The dog snarled and whipped towards him. Usopp screamed and dodged, but the dog still latched on, biting him as hard as it could. Let go you mangy mutt. Usopp screamed in pain as it drew blood from his arm, even with the relatively weak bite force of a dachshund. Pocket pepper. The second it opened its mouth to sneeze again, eyes watering, Usopp wrenched his arm away. Usopp expanding plug. He improvised another attack, throwing a pellet into the dog's mouth. It immediately expanded into a hardish foam plug that jammed its mouth open. The dog had panicked eyes as it sneezed and then immediately exploded. Flames burst from the ruptures that formed in its body, throwing smoke everywhere. When it cleared, the dachshund was charred and unconscious. Laiis Mr. Four looked apoplectic, leaping forward with all the rage of my baby, would never hurt a fly. Dog owners everywhere. Sue. Usopp screamed in fright, trying to use one of his few Zoro for the day to get the hell out of Dodge. He really needed to train his legs more. This would have been simple if he could use them as often as Sanji or even Nami. But Miss Merry Christmas had other ideas. She popped up, slower than before for sure, but she was able to grab his legs anyway. Shit. Mr. Four's bat smashed square into his face, smashing bone, flaying skin, throwing blood into the air, and flinging him away. Usopp. Valerie flashed forward and grabbed him before he could crash into the dirt. Usopp. Speak to me. He coughed out some blood, groaning, that hurt. Damn it, I'm sorry Usopp. I should have listened. Valerie laid him down and let out a pained grimace, her left arm limp as she held herself up with her parasol on trembling legs. How dare you hurt our dog? Miss Merry Christmas hissed out, radiating fury, we're going to send you bastards to hell to meet your captain. Usopp and Valerie froze. What did you say? The blonde asked, her face shadowed. What, are your ears as bad as your eclairs? Your dumbass captain is dead. Miss Merry Christmas grinned viciously as Valerie did not react, drowned beneath rain dinners, just as Mr. Zero planned. That's what you get for involving yourselves with Baroque works. That's a lie. Usopp found his second wind and sprang up to a sitting position, unminding of his injuries. You shut your mouth, penguin lady. He ignored her angry protest that she was a mole, there's no way Luffy is dead. He's going to be king of the pirates. There's no way he's dying in the Sandy Kingdom. Pirate King. She sputtered, ahahahahaha. Pirate King. Oh, my sides. My hips. Pirate King. Don't make me laugh. Ahahahaha. Usopp got to his feet, don't you dare. He snarled, glaring at her with blood pumping from his face. Usopp. Valerie's face was shadowed, get that bitch. Mr. Four was rushing towards them before Valerie vanished. F4 Mr. Four wheezed as her parasol's point crashed into his sternum, launching him back a dozen feet. Mr. Four. Miss Merry Christmas yelled before diving into the sand and digging towards Valerie, who was stomping toward her partner. Don't take your eyes off me, missy. She burst from the sand, ready to carve up Valerie's pretty face with her Moletown banana. Instead, she erupted from the sand facing Usopp's slingshot. Usopp fired a pellet straight into her mouth and it burst into a noxious-looking red liquid that steamed. Miss Merry Christmas crashed to the floor and didn't move for a second. And then she twitched. And twitched again. And then she threw her head back and screamed. Aye. She squealed as fire burst from her mouth. Her eyes burst through her sunglasses, shaped like chili peppers. Tears streamed from her eyes and snot dripped from her nose as every single pain receptor in her mouth was stabbed over and over by the capsaicin in Usopp's Sasatsu. Sasori Bashi. Alarm bells were ringing in her head as she flailed. Listen well. Usopp stood over her like the Reaper himself, dripping blood. There are certain things one must never do. He raised his spear, which looked fairly different. It wasn't as stupid looking for one and held much less of a punch due to his modifications. But it was still enough. He brought it crashing down on her face and an explosion even bigger than Lassu's baseballs erupted around them. When it cleared, both of them were covered in soot. Usopp was trembling in pain, but she was barely conscious, never insult a man's dream. You got that, you penguin hag. Miss Merry Christmas fell over, smoking. Poor Mr. Four yelled, swinging at Valerie. She ducked under it, that thing is 4 tons, huh? I believe it. It hurt like hell even with my 10,000 kilo reinforcements. You broke my arm. She clenched her parasol tightly and brought it down harshly on the bat when he tried swiping again, which immediately slipped from his grasp and crashed to the sands below. For his eyes popped out. So, here's a question for you, Four, if 4 tons hurts like hell. She raised her parasol as he ducked down to grab his bat, what does 11 tons feel like? She yelled, swinging the parasol. It crashed into his face and broke every tooth in his mouth. The huge man flew off his feet, crashed through the nearby ruins, and continued on until he was a twinkle in the sky. We did it. Usopp finally allowed himself to fall over. Can you please not fly off the handle next time someone insults your desserts? I promise, Usopp. You got hurt because of me. It'll never happen again. Kaya. She let out a nervous but cute little laugh. You sure? He asked blandly as he raised an eyebrow. Of course. I wouldn't lie to a nakama. She glared at him. What are you doing now, then? His eyebrow rose higher. Anger management. She shot back cheerfully, once more punting Miss Merry Christmas in the ribs. Boy vey. I really must recommend you just give up, Tanuki. Miss Doublefinger took a drag from her kiseru, make it nice and easy, or else you'll just die tired. I already said I'm a reindeer, didn't I? Chopper growled back at her, righteous anger overpowering his fear for a moment. How do I look like a Tanuki? Huh, I don't even have a long floofy tail. She smirked, not going to comment on your pending death. She blew out a plume of smoke. Chopper's fight left him, and he took an unsteady step back. Why, you won't hurt a cute little reindeer, would you? Her smile turned predatory as she looked down on the smaller animal. I wonder. Chopper shook his head, remembering just what was on the line. He couldn't get intimidated by this woman. How would he look his crew in the eye after that? I'm not scared of you, he huffed, stealing his resolve. I won't let you go past me. She pocketed her kiseru. We'll see that, won't we? He was regretting not getting enough time to train with Luffy before they landed on Alabasta. He hadn't really managed to learn any of the Rakishiki yet. Growling, he turned into his heavy point, towering over his opponent. It did little to make her less dangerous, but it did make him feel much better. Miss Doublefinger looked unimpressed, but Chopper didn't let that get to him, rushing forward with his fist pulled back, ready to punch her lights out. Just like Doctorine trained him to do. She returned his raised eyebrow. Really? She drawled, I feel bad for you and give you a warning, and you rush me anyway. You really aren't very smart, are you? She raised her hand, stinger finger. Whoa. Chopper rolled to the side, crying out in a little bit of pain as her index finger turned into a 2-meter-long stinger, intercepting his charge and slicing a thin cut onto his cheek. He rolled to the side, but she didn't do anything else. Good reflexes. She applauded mockingly, having returned to normal. Chopper panted, his chest already feeling tight as his first lesson of what a gun could do replayed in his head, feeling his blood trickle down from his wound. He grunted and pushed back against the fear, getting his senses in check. And needle powers, huh? Close. She raised her arm again, and this time a ring of spikes erupted from her wrists. I ate the Toji no Mi, making me a human spike. Again, feel free to just give up and hold still. I'll make it quick and painless. Scary, Chopper mumbled, taking a step back, eyes still locked onto the woman's spiked hands. All of his instincts were screaming at him to run away and not let her get close to him again. But his body hunched over, memories of what Karu had told him about Alabasta and VV's desperation resurfaced. He thought of what would happen if he backed down now. He could only imagine his father again. I can't heal this country if you assholes kill it. He declared. Heal a country? Miss Doublefinger blinked in confusion. Have you gone mad with fright already? Chopper shook his head, glaring back at the assassin, who had disappeared from her previous position. His eyes bulged as he saw her shadow on the ground, squeaking and looking up. She was bearing down on him from the sky. Honestly now, are you a child? You shouldn't take your eyes off your opponent in a fight to the death. Doublefinger chided him, both of her arms turned into spikes, double stinger. She aimed for his head and started thrusting her arms at him. Chopper quickly shrunk down into brain point, making her miss her attacks. That form is so tiny. She exclaimed in irritation. She had misjudged how small he was due to the massive increase of his large form. I'm only 15. He yelled at her, turning into his walk point. With the close proximity, she was actually caught on his antlers and he whipped his head skyward, flinging her up. How about thaw, what the heck? Doublefinger was standing upside down on an arch above them. Why is that so freaking cool? He whined, looking up at her with starry eyes. You're like a ninja. Ahaha. Doublefinger couldn't help but chuckle. It was a simple application of her powers, after all. All she was doing was stabbing into the concrete with spikes coming from her feet. I guess you really are 15. How cute. She teased, smiling lightly. Have to say that does make me feel bad. I'm not a huge fan of hurting little kiddies. You don't have to. Chopper breathed, thinking that someone as cool as a ninja couldn't truly be evil, right? Since the stupid croc is going to kill you all anyway. You think I'm going to believe that? She asked him, raising her eyebrow. I've never failed a mission, and neither has Mr. 1. Mr. 0 has no reason to kill me. Oh. They told me about that one. You know who he is now, which is against your organization's bylaws. Chopper recounted, holding one of his hooves up. Also, you know too much. He raised the other hoof, and finally he chuckled, thinking that it was fun knowing things others didn't. I imagine he didn't tell you about the bomb he rigged to blow Alubarna up, did he? Doublefinger blinked, humming softly. You're not bad at this whole mind game thing, kid. She smirked, but you went too heavy-handed with it. I don't believe that for a second. But that's what Robin told me. It must be true. Chopper whined, unable to believe she would lie to him. Doublefinger stared blankly at him, tilting her head slightly. Who? Chopper blinked. Huh? She told us she was working with you guys. He paused and scratched the back of his head. Wait, no, hold on. What was her cool secret agent name again? Miss something Sunday. That took Doublefinger by surprise. Her eyes widening in shock for the first time the entire battle. Sunday. She betrayed us. To a Tanuki. I'm not a Tanuki. Chopper screeched, chopping the air. She harumphed, now a little upset. She'd had a good relationship with Mr. Zero's partner. She had even thought they might have been friends one day after their victory. Enough. She pulled one of her feet from the archway, stinging spear. She pushed off hard, flinging herself at Chopper and turning the right way up. Both of her legs were transformed into a single large spike and Chopper was forced to jump away. Doublefinger landed and immediately rushed out of the dust cloud she had kicked up. Double stinger barrage. She rapidly punched with her arm spikes, throwing a flurry of attacks at the reindeer. Each missed attack pierced through anything and everything in the way. Ah! Chopper gasped, taking steps back and watching the attack, slowly noticing the small hole in the pattern as he switched to heavy point, heavy gong. He swung at his opponent's face. She puckered up like she was going to kiss him and instead a smaller spike extended from her face. Ah! Chopper rapidly backed away, cradling his fist. Her spike had pierced clean through and he was lucky she hadn't torn through a tendon when the spike pierced through his fist. Damn it. That hurts. He turned and ran. What, after all that talk, you're just going to run? Doublefinger extended spikes from her feet and started walking after him at a fast clip, exaggeratedly shaking her hips in a sexy manner. Damn it. Chopper cursed as he took out a roll of bandages to take care of his hand. Dottie was probably going to have a hole in his hoof. That was going to hurt. He quickly and expertly wrapped the wound up, putting pressure on the wound and hoping the bandages would be enough to stop the bleeding for now. He'd take care of it properly after she was defeated. I can't even hit her. How am I going to? He choked on his words as he heard her voice. That's right. Miss Doublefinger had basically spider walked on the buildings, leaving tiny miniature holes with every step. You can't touch me. Chopper immediately reached for a rumble ball. And you're not going to win. Double finger stingers. Both of her hands grew spikes out of every finger. Rumble. Chopper crunched through the pill. Die. Miss Doublefinger launched herself at him from above before he changed. What? A fourth form she couldn't abort her attack and had to follow through. Her fingers pierced through Chopper and did absolutely nothing. You won't be able to hurt me now. Chopper squeaked, his head sticking out of a mound of floof. Guard point. All that was visible of him were his face and legs. The rest of his body was surrounded by what looked like a cloud of floofy fur. Which she was stuck inside, the fur constricting around her hands tightly. Miss Doublefinger tried to pull her arms back, the fur had tangled around her hand, not even budging. What the hell are you? Zones only have 3 forms. Why could I tell you, baka? Chopper squeaked before he started to spin in a circle and buck like a bronco. What? Miss Doublefinger yelled as she was whipped up and down while being spun. Her vision started to swim from the disorientation before Chopper abruptly switched back to jumping point. With the fur no longer gripping her, she was flung away and impacted one of the buildings. Chopper launched himself after her and immediately swapped to arm point, Kakutera's AO. His hard hoof smashed right into her gut. Miss Doublefinger gagged, spittle flying from her mouth as she broke through the wall. Immediately, the building collapsed, burying the woman. Chopper fell back, panting from the fight. I did it. He got up and cheered. I did it. I won. And then dozens of spikes erupted from the rubble, lifting it all off of the woman or just breaking it up. Chopper's jaw dropped as a panting and visibly injured Miss Doublefinger stumbled out. Ah. Zombie. She was dusty, her luscious blue hair was matted and covered in grime, and she was bleeding from several places. Even her clothes were torn and frayed. Her eerily calm expression had been left behind with the debris, tendons and veins bulging on her face, with the sheer amount of rage her expression was trying to convey. I'm going to kill you slowly. She promised as she tore her ruined jacket off, leaving only her soporific skin-tight number left, her fingers extended into spikes which she stabbed into her shoulders. Chopper's eyes widened in confusion before they almost popped out of his skull as her arms bulged in size, her musculature becoming just as heavy as heavy point. Spike you puncture. She roared, flexing. WWH, what the hell? Chopper pointed a hoof at her. How the heck did you do that? Is that a ninja deep? He rapidly rolled out of the way as she charged, her arm raised in a picture-perfect lariat. She continued without stopping, and upon hitting the pillar that had been behind Chopper, she completely broke through it. The pillar was flung upwards from its spot before crashing on its destroyed base and starting to tip over. It shattered in midair and continued to crumble around her. Chopper stared with wide eyes and a gaping mouth before he abruptly turned into walk point and ran in the opposite direction. Ninjas are scary. He panted, knowing his time with the rumble ball was dwindling. That back here. Doublefinger had even gotten faster. She tucked into a spiked ball and rolled after him like a demented hedgehog. Why? Chopper screamed as he ran, no thanks. I got my rabies shot already. Too bad. She yelled as she rolled past him, stuck to the ground, and unfurled herself in a hurry, turning as Chopper tried to stop himself from running into her, Stinger Rampage. Chopper turned into guard point, seeing no other alternative. Her forearm hit him in the fluff and launched him backwards. Why I? He screamed as he flew backwards from the impact. He hit a wall and rebounded off of it before hitting an arch above and ricocheting off that too, and then hitting the ground. If Miss Doublefinger hadn't been so mad, she might even have been laughing at the reindeer bouncing off everything like a pinball. As it was, it just made her madder because she couldn't hurt him in that stupid form. After a final bounce, Chopper reverted to brain point and landed up above. I need to find her weakness. Scope. He made that diamond with his hooves. That down here. She rushed up the side of the building with her stinger step, and even in her anger, she still swung her hips like an idiot as she walked. If anything, it just looked funnier due to her faster pace. That's it. Chopper dropped his hands and leapt down with jump point before switching to arm point. She jumped and flipped down to the ground before rushing him again, cocktail as AO. He yelled, knowing that her arm spikes lacked the penetrating power in this muscular form that her slender form had. Don't underestimate me. Stinger Rampage. She threw her fist at him in a wild haymaker. But she dodged completely by switching back into brain point and sliding between her legs. She whirled around and her eyes widened at seeing yet another new form. Chopper's body had grown again. His human arms were bulky, but his feet were still hooves. He was bent over in a running start stance, and his antlers were massive. He was already charging, and Doublefinger gagged as he gored her with his antlers. She screamed in pain and fear as he pounded her into another pillar, breaking through it as easily as she had earlier. Blood flew through the air as she went unconscious for good this time, and not a moment too soon as his rumble bowl ran out and he reverted to brain point. He staggered as the building shook around them and pieces of stone that had lasted generations crumbled around them. Chopper turned into heavy point just in time to punch away a bit of falling rubble, but then another hit him in the shoulder and he howled in pain as it broke. Knowing he needed to get out of there, he quickly grabbed his opponent and ran from the building. He dropped her to the floor once they were both out of danger and took one last, relieved look at her before he limped away. I won. I won. He said to himself. He didn't make it 100 feet away before he fell over, unconscious himself. Sanji lit up his cigarette with a small flourish, letting out a cloud of smoke after a deep nerve-settling inhale. You're big. He put his Zippo away, quirking a grin, fought bigger. Never one like me. Mr. One stared at him dispassionately. Indeed, he was an incredibly tall and very muscular man who had longer limbs than normal. His arms at the very least were on the thinner side for his bulk, making him look rather lanky. His head was shaved, he had a dark unibrow and bigger than average lips. Ah yes Mr. One, right, Sanji grinned, or should that be Dawes Bones, legendary West Blue assassin. Mr. One's eyes widened before he glared at Sanji hard, I see. It isn't that you defeated Miss All Sunday. She betrayed us. Oh, I wouldn't say that. Sanji pulled his cigarette from his lips, tapping on it lightly to get rid of the spent ashes. You have to be loyal to something to betray it. It's a pity you all are too stupid to realize the crocodile will kill you once this is over. She wasn't. Failure must be punished. Mr. One retorted, and you are an imbecile if you think I did not consider the possibility, once he revealed his face. Our plan will go off without a hitch, and you all will be dead. Mr. Zero will have no reason to dispose of us. He'll need loyal soldiers, after all, or else the world government will simply waltz in and do away with him. You aren't too bright, are you? Sanji shook his head, tutting in pity, you all know too much. He can make himself look like a hero and reluctant ruler and continue operating in secrecy while getting himself new patsies. You all aren't. Enough of this. Mr. One declared before rushing at Sanji with surprising speed. Die. He swung his arm, which was transformed into a frighteningly sharp blade, at Sanji's chest. Sanji immediately reacted, kicking upwards and meeting the strike with his shoe. Mr. One raised an eyebrow as his blade dug right through the bottom of Sanji's fancy shoes and yet stopped cold on his foot. Sanji looked irritated, these were nice shoes. He said blandly. Then why wear them? Mr. One asked blandly, turning his arm partially back to human form to grab Sanji's foot. He yanked the man towards him, his other arm flashing. Sanji raised his knee to block while in midair and a rather metallic sounding clang rang through the air. HMPH, metallic bracers, soles and likely vambraces won't save you. You can't armor your entire body. The South chef must always be immaculately dressed. Sanji grinned, reaching down and lowering his pants where it was cut, revealing pale skin. and guess again. But the Mr. One narrowed his eyes, so, you have a devil fruit of your own. No wonder you are not afraid of my blades. Which is it? None. I'm quite an accomplished swimmer, you know. Sanji's grin widened as he saw Mr. One's unibrow twitch in irritation, and afraid of your blades. He scoffed at the thought, what kind of a chef would I be if a little knife could frighten me? He prepared himself, knowing that it was time to get serious now. Prepare yourself, Dawes Bones, or else I'll saute you. He vanished, making Mr. One's eyes bulge as he was kicked in the chest, hard. Past. The assassin thought to himself, feeling himself sliding back, his feet transformed into blades and sinking into the rock beneath to slow himself down. Mr. One smiled, but weak. He casually brushed his chest off nonchalantly. I hardly felt that. Guess I'll have to try a little harder. Sanji vanished again, appearing above Mr. One, who was able to track him this time. Renkyaku. He swiped his leg through the air and it noticeably churned, turning into a visible wave that raced towards his enemy. Mr. One raised his left arm just in time for the air blade to reach him. It screeched on his metallic skin before he parried it away from him. It hit the ground, dicing clean through it and carving a small trench as it went. He smiled, ho, maybe this will be fun. I see you've got some tricks of your own. He kicked back, his leg transformed into a sharp point. Sanji reappeared behind him and his eyes immediately widened as he jerked his head to the side. A thin cut appeared on his cheek even as he raised his leg with a quick swipe and unleashed a second fast Renkyaku. It hit Mr. One between the legs but merely screeched against him as even that could be transformed into steel. The air blade dissipated as Mr. One lowered his leg. You dodged that. Mr. One grinned viciously as he looked at Sanji, and you're bleeding. Looks like your trick is just a trick. Or perhaps you have to time it well. He immediately attacked again, his legs screaming through the air and meeting Sanji's once more. But he didn't stop with just one attack, seeing it ineffective. He revealed an acrobatic fighting style, one that was perhaps even more so than Sanji's. He quickly retracted one leg and spun in midair, launching the other as a sharp pointed blade. It hit Sanji square in the chest, knocking him stumbling back. He flipped forward, landing on one palm and swinging his leg downwards toward Sanji's head. Sanji dodged back before springing forward and launching a roundhouse kick at his opponent. But Mr. One wasn't idle and raised his other hand, sup Kerm. He clawed his fingers, revealing his entire palm to have been turned into blades. Sanji clicked his teeth and stopped his kick short, backing away. Heh. Mr. One got back on his feet, you've given yourself away, cook. He rubbed his chin, every time you've blocked my blades, you've stiffened up. Your defense must be a technique. One which you cannot use while moving much, meaning your counterattacks lack that defensive property. Sanji clenched his teeth around his cigarette, smart little bastard, aren't you? After seeing it so many times, only a monkey wouldn't figure it out. Mr. One bent his knees, you can't hurt me with your pitiful attacks. I wonder how long you can defend for. Adamiku suptu. He dashed forward, both feet, arms, and every finger turned into blades. He swiped at Sanji's head, who merely swayed and dodged with a preternatural flexibility, simply flowing around the blades. Hami-e. Sanji muttered, focusing up. He was rapidly backpedaling, dodging Mr. One's attacks by the barest of margins. The man raced after him, the street becoming pockmarked with holes from being stabbed by his sharp feet. A claw swipe, a roundhouse, a spinning jumping back kick, a jab, a spinning backfist, a compass kick. That one almost brushed Sanji's chin. He grinned, I wasn't looking for a trim, you shitty razor. Mr. One saw how strangely Sanji was moving and was rapidly becoming frustrated by his sheer inability to land a blow. So, he changed the parameters. Without Sanji noticing, he turned them slightly, changing the blonde's trajectory. Sanji only realized his mistake when his back hit the wall of the building. You should pay closer attention. Mr. One chided, planting his right leg into the ground and thrusting forward with both palms splayed open, sup Karingatij plus. Shit. Sanji raised his right leg and activated Tekai again, blocking the attack. Guh. He cried out as just the force of the attack was enough to put him through the wall. The cuts extended far past the physical blades, and the entire building was diced through 10 times, one for each finger. It was almost as if each individual digit released the equivalent of a Renkyaku. It collapsed, burying Sanji in the rubble. A small cloud of dust, sand, and bits of rock rose into the air, with Mr. One turning and walking away. You were amusing, cook. Only amusing. A rumble behind him stopped him in his tracks, and as he turned, he swiped through a large bit of the sandstone building that Sanji had just kicked at him. The blonde was a mess. His suit was tattered and now covered in dust and grime. Where do you think you're going, you shitty fillet knife? HMPH. You could have lived, fool. Mr. One responded, ignoring his question. But you're irritating me now. You have nothing to harm me with, and yet you keep standing and getting in the way of my mission. Super Horm. His arms sprouted many blades, almost overlaid over each other. And then they started to spin so fast that they were whirring audibly. Sanji vanished, appearing behind Mr. One, who immediately launched a spinning backfist at the blonde. Sanji raised his leg and activated Tekai, gritting his teeth as many metallic-sounding dings rang through the air. His pants shredded off of his leg and Mr. One used his superior strength to push harder. Sanji let out a cry of pain as his defense failed and Mr. One's buzzsaws of death started taking chunks of flesh away, coating himself in blood. Sanji was launched back and Mr. One followed, thrusting his other arm forward. Sanji had no defense this time and got his chest completely carved up. His suit was chewed through and then blood spewed in rivulets through the air as he crashed into a stone pillar. Slurp. Mr. One licked Sanji's blood off his arm. He was rather coated in the stuff now. HMPH. Mr. One shook his head as Sanji's labored breathing rang through the air. Stay down this time, fool. He turned, just stay down and bleed out while you rue the day you heard my name. I am going to go and accomplish my mission. Mr. Zero asked me to present Miss Wednesday's head to him. Sanji coughed out a small plume of blood and fought to get to his feet. Not, he groaned, while I still draw breath. Mr. One stopped, turning around with an angry vein pulsing on his forehead. Very well then. He said, turning around fully as he watched Sanji stumble to his feet. I'll cut yours off first. Sanji rasped, his vision wavering from the blood loss. But he straightened up and glared at the approaching assassin. A man should never touch a hair on a woman's head. He started to spin, his body whirring before Mr. One's sight. Mr. One scoffed, is mimicking me all you can do? You won't be able to hurt me no matter how much you spin. He glared, in fact, you're reminding me of that fool Mr. Two and his idiotic twirling. He stomped forward. Don't you know? Sanji continued to spin faster and faster, a knife that is overheated will lose its temper. Mr. One jerked to a stop, watching as a spark ignited near Sanji. Then another. Then another. What? It's glowing. Diable jam. Sanji snapped to a stop, his mangled leg glowing white hot and raised before him. A leg glowing with heat not only gains extreme speed. He vanished, and Mr. One howled as Sanji's foot plowed into his midsection. Immediately, the sizzling of flesh filled the air as the heat started to cook Mr. One from the inside out, but also the destructive power of the devil. Planchet strike. Mr. One flew backwards accompanied by flames, blood spurting from his mouth. He flew into the air, Sanji having directed the kick upwards. Sanji vanished from sight, utilizing Gep and Zoro to get behind and above Mr. One, with his leg raised high, flamage shot. He flew down, his foot meeting halfway with Mr. One's face. More heat buffeted the man, and flames erupted around them as Mr. One was sent hurtling to the ground like a comet. He impacted with a loud crash, slightly cratering the ground beneath him and shaking everything in the immediate vicinity. When the dust settled, he was revealed completely unconscious on the ground, his face and stomach blackened with burns. Sanji landed, stumbling to his knees. He panted as his legs returned to normal, but they were red and one had dried blood caked all over it. He tried to get up, but his legs screamed in pain, completely covered in cuts and microfractures from all of the fighting. He panted, but pulled a fresh cigarette from what remained of his suit with a trembling hand. God may have created cooking. He struggled to light up, eventually managing it and taking a deep drag to settle his nerves. But the devil created spice. He managed to get up and hopped over to a wall to slump by. He chuckled ruefully. Thanks for watching. Comment below with your favorite part of the story.